Hey everyone, this is Elenbaas from Nightlight Astrology. Happy Monday, everybody. Today we're going to start the week off by doing some horoscopes for all of you guys. There is a major eclipse this week at the last anaretic degree of the sign of Aries, not too far away from Jupiter in Aries. And as the sun finishes the eclipse and crosses over the sign boundary, it hits a square to Pluto right away. So major stuff going on this week. We're going to approach this from a few different perspectives. Today, we're going to start off by looking at 4 things the eclipse brings, probably sort of generically and overall. And then we're also going to take it through the 12 whole sign houses and give you a sense of where to look topically in your life and get a sense of where the eclipse might be activating in your birth chart. So that is our agenda for today. Before we get into it, as always, don't forget to like and subscribe, share your comments in the comment section. You guys know that really helps the channel to grow, and I really appreciate it. You guys always have such nice stories to share as well. And if you have one this week, don't forget to use the hashtag grabbed or email your story to us. Grabbed@nightlightastrology.com is the email address. Use the hashtag grabbed and then put the transit like solar eclipse in Aries and then tell us a story that showed up. Would love to hear from you guys. You can find transcripts of any of my daily talks on my website, which is nightlightastrology.com. I also want to point you over to the website right now because we are in enrollment season. My next class, which is called Ancient Astrology for the Modern Mystic, begins coming up here in the month of June. So if you go over to the website, nightlightastrology.com, click on the courses tab, go to the first year program. We begin the next new course starts on June 11th. You can see what some alumni have had to say about it, look over everything the course includes. It's 30 classes on the year plus 12 guest lectures. We have a forum discussion that is really lively, staffed with live tutors that are always there to answer your questions within a day. And we also have breakout study sessions led by our staff if you need a little extra support integrating, understanding the material. This is a course in ancient Hellenistic astrology that'll prepare you to read birth charts. We do have 2 years worth of curriculum. The second year program also begins in June. So for people who are already enrolled in year 1, you might want to consider getting ready for year 2, which also begins in June. Horary astrology also begins in June. The course is online, so we go through webinars and you can attend them live, or you can watch the recordings. Everything is yours to keep and download and go at your own pace. There's a certification exam at the end that's optional. Some people like to take that and get the certification. Some people do not. It's totally up to you guys. At the bottom right-hand corner, you will find tuition assistance. Now, we have a certain amount of these available every year, and every year they tend to go a little bit more quickly, though we typically are really accommodating and try to make sure that no one's left out. But we do ask that you apply early for that if you need a little bit of help to make the class happen. That's there so that nobody gets priced out of studying a sacred science. And because the Kickstarter does well, we can really make sure that our programs don't have like a bottom line. So this is an option that's there for you. You might want to check it out. There's a payment plan and early bird rate as well. If you have any questions about the need-based tuition, if you can just click apply now and tell us your situation. We are glad to work with people who are on a fixed budget, or whatever your situation may be. Sometimes it's single parents, or you're only working part-time, or whatever the case is. Just let us know and we'll work with you. So email that is info@nightlightastrology.com if you have any questions. Okay, well, that is it for our announcements. So we will go ahead and take a look at the transit chart to look at this eclipse. And we're going to start by just getting a feel for what this eclipse is going to activate, broadly speaking, just sort of across the board. What should everyone expect from this eclipse? And we're going to do some deeper dives into the eclipse in the next couple of days. So today we're just getting things going by looking at our horoscopes, which ought to prepare us. Since the eclipses are on Wednesday, I wanted to give us plenty of time. So this is Wednesday morning that the eclipse is coming through, April 19th. It perfects later on in the day on April 19th. You'll see it all coming together here in the sign of Aries. The host of this eclipse is the ruler Mars, who is in its fall in Cancer. So a pretty potentially a very intense eclipse. And we're going to get more into the dispositorship of Mars in Cancer probably in tomorrow's episode. But anyway, 4 things that this eclipse will bring in particular. Well, one is the beginning of the end. Now, I say that because it's an interesting combination. You have an eclipse at the last anaretic degree of Aries, and the last degrees for ancient astrologers of the signs were associated with the more destructive or deconstructive energies of the malefics, Mars and Saturn. Excuse me. So, at that last anaretic degree, when an eclipse is forming, but it's in a cardinal sign that likes to start things, you could think of the events coming this week and in the next couple of weeks as the beginning of the end of something. And the end, sometimes endings or transitions in our lives happen all of a sudden because of, distinct events that pop up and sort of announce to us life is going to go in a different direction now. It's going to take a while, but you can start to see the you can see the writing on the wall. There's something is now starting to end. So I would watch for that for everybody, because we have a sign that likes to initiate things, but the anaretic degree, the very last sign, that tends toward endings. So excuse me. Put that together and you get the beginning of the end of something. So that's one thing to watch for this week. And it can be an event, it can be a subtle, a little subtler than you may think, but you'll start to notice over the weeks ahead that you have reached the starting of the ending of something. Now that's one possibility. Number two would be just a more dramatic turning point or starting point. A turning point would just be because the tropical signs, Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn, the tropical comes from the word tropos, which means to turn. And when the sun is going through these signs, it reaches a major turning point in terms of the quality of light within the solar year. So in the sign of Aries, for example, you have the light taking over from the darkness and the light half of the year beginning. So that means it's a turning point. Well, an eclipse in Aries in general, no matter what degree it is at, will have a more dramatic, pivotal quality to it, where there will be a turning point. Now, the turning point with the sun exalted in Aries usually has to do with light emerging from darkness, which means it's very young. It's something emerging and coming forth from out of the unconscious or the darkness, a lot like the moment of conception or birth. So it has a very spring-like, so that the turning points are often inceptional. And then a starting point, well, that's what a starting point is, but also the Aries eclipse can say, from here on out, from this point forward, we're now doing this. So it has a very dramatic, fiery feeling of turning in some way or starting something. Now, again, I'm trying to be as general as possible with these so that we're going to narrow in on the house location through the rising signs, but this should at least give you a feeling for what an Aries eclipse at the last degree will probably be about in the most general sense. Number three, the qualities of will or willfulness, fire, aggression, anger, frustration, effort, and heroism reaching like a flashpoint. So it's boiling over, it's erupting, and it's becoming very loud. So the qualities of will, fire, anger, aggression, effort, heroism, I have to do something. It's a dramatic turning point, a starting point that requires effort, will. I might be having to deal with things like anger, frustration, the heroic call to action. These are things that could also come up in an Aries eclipse in general. And then number four would be dad or leader karma. And I put that just because there's Jupiter right there. We just had a synodic reset moment with Jupiter and the sun. There's dad/leader karma in the air. Leadership meaning anyone who's in charge of something or authority figures, but also paternal karma may be quite strong for some people with the exalted sun with Jupiter in the sign of Aries and the big eclipse. So that's just something else to watch for. Okay, so those are the general signs of the times. And I try to present those most generally because today we just want to get a feel for where in your chart topically these things will be appearing, and then the general feeling of the eclipse. We're going to get into the archetypal signatures in depth, including the dispositorship of Mars in Cancer over the eclipse tomorrow, maybe even on Wednesday. We'll see how much material I feel like I have to share. So for today, what I want to do is just go through all 12 whole sign houses and give you a feel for where you might notice this eclipse topically. We'll start with Aries, and we'll just give you some key words to remember. And for a lot of people, this is going to be review, but it can help to just get you going. So if you're I recommend going by your rising sign. I mean, some people listen to sun sign horoscopes, and I get that. If you want it to correspond with your chart from the Hellenistic perspective, which is whole sign houses, you look at your rising sign. So we're looking at first house, Aries rising. And if that's you, then we're talking about this dramatic turning point or the beginning of an end, and all of those general themes that I just went through in the realm of selfhood, your identity, your health, your body, your appearance, your sense of who you are psychologically, behavior and character. Those kinds of things are reaching some kind of pivotal turning point. So that's the space you want to look for. How is this affecting me as a person? What kind of turning point am I reaching in my very sense of self, and how am I being asked to evolve? If we go to Taurus rising, it's interesting because Taurus rising has Aries in the 12th, which sometimes means that the Aries, let's call it Aries energy, is in your blind spot. This means, for example, that it could be seeking greater expression and integration into who you are. Sometimes the 12th house represents the things that undermine us, and sometimes it represents the things that we don't quite know how to consciously integrate into our sense of who we are. So look right now for this eclipse to be part of influences that are undermining you in some way, whether they're coming from other people or from within yourself or an environment that you're in. This is a great time to become aware of what's toxic or what's not working or what's dragging you down somehow. And it might be related to some of your own blind spots. So becoming aware of those things, the eclipse might help you to do that. On the other hand, is it possible that there's some heroic Marsy fiery qualities within you that don't quite know where they belong or how to incorporate themselves into your personality? I mean, you're a Taurus rising, you're a creature of Venus, you're earthy, you're sensual, and so forth. So if that's you, then it might be that this eclipse is helping you to learn how to identify and incorporate elements of the Aries energy into your conscious self. So that's what I would speak to for Tauruses. Now, if we go to Gemini, we're looking at the 11th house, which means that this eclipse is taking place around the topic of groups, communities, friends, allies, networks of people. And it could be that you're reaching some kind of critical turning point within some kind of social participation. Maybe it's a new group of friends. Maybe it's a new group of allies or colleagues. Maybe relationships are reaching a turning point where you can't go back to the same old thing and some changes need to be made. But there's also the call, maybe a heroic call to join in the efforts and actions of other people. I would be looking also at the question of who are the most advantageous people to have in my life and who are those people that are draining or, sucking me dry somehow. Those are the kinds of questions you might be looking at right now in the groups, in the eclipse in the house of groups and friends. If you're a Cancer rising, then this is taking place in your 10th house. Now, that's going to be the place of career or actions and reputation in the world. So what are you getting tired of? What are you feeling exhausted by? And where is the energy that gives you life and fills you up, especially when it comes to career, but also just your sense of calling and purpose in the world? This is a great time to switch things up, especially if you're reaching the end of what you can commit to or what you feel you can give and what you can't. Like, I can't give anymore because I don't have any authentic energy invested in this, or I'm ready to try something new or different professionally. It can coincide with things like raises, changes of jobs, changing companies, changing directions, or just being like, well, I guess hey, Saturn's entered your 9th house. I'm going to go back to school and change careers entirely. So, eclipses in the 10th house signal seasons, because remember that eclipses are just starting to occur in your 10th house as well, where there's going to be a lot of very serious effort made on behalf of the career, making sure it's the right career, it's the right use of your time and energy professionally, or that if you're not working, if you're retired, or for whatever reason, you're a full-time parent or something like that. This will still have to do with your sense of calling and purpose. What am I doing with my life, and is it making me happy? And there may be some changes that need to be made or that are coming. So if we go to Leo, then we see that the eclipse is happening in the ninth house. Now that's the place that has to do with our beliefs, with education, religion, philosophy, spirituality, even to a certain extent, our political beliefs. You could call it the realm of ideology, philosophy, learning, and also a place that's interestingly related to astrology and divination and the signs and omens of the gods, dreams and dream interpretation, mysticism. So with an eclipse in that whole sign house, I have to wonder, is there something new opening up around your faith and beliefs? Is it a paradigm change? Are you going back to school? Have you found a new mentor? Are you teaching something? Are you developing your knowledge or mastery of some skills by taking a course? Or just what beliefs are worth fighting for or on behalf of? That might be an Aries ninth house question. So the refinement or development of beliefs, education, knowledge, faith, and wisdom, that's where things are at for you if you're a Leo rising. All right, let's go to Virgo. So with Virgo, we place this eclipse into the 8th house, which is a place of soul contracts with other beings. So what do you owe to other people, and how is this eclipse changing the landscape of your soul contracts? Is it bringing new relationships that are advantageous or that will help you get somewhere, or you may be helping other people get somewhere? You could also be looking at those bonds that need to be broken. Well, I can't have this relationship any longer because I don't have... it's not something that I can keep giving to. I'm not getting back enough from it. That's a very 8th house eclipse kind of moment. You could also be looking at what other people think about you and whether you should pay attention to that, or how much attention you should pay to what other people need, want, or expect from you. It's also a place that could have something to do with the topics of death, mortality, fear, and anxiety about the future, and working through some of those issues. You also have in the 8th house, with this Aries eclipse and Jupiter there, the potential to be starting something because of the blessings or benefits provided by others. For example, getting a loan. So those are some of the things to watch for. That's the area in which area of life in which to watch for the eclipse if you're a Virgo rising. Well, with Libra, it's like it's so straightforward. It's in the house of relationships. And we're talking about the energy of Aries as a me energy. And the Libra risings tend to be, creatures of Venus, so a little bit more we oriented. So you might notice that those energies or qualities archetypally are being pitted against one another in this eclipse. How are your relationships forcing or asking you to evolve, to be more aware of how you exist as an individual apart from others, with your own set of needs, ideas, will, and decisions that are totally your own, versus where are you being asked to compromise, or how much should you expect that someone else is willing to compromise, and be conscious of your needs and desires as well as their own. So just a quintessential space for relationship exploration. If you're not in a relationship, this could carry over into your broader social life, or even experiences in other social arenas like the workplace. I say that because oftentimes, we lean into the 7th house on the level of romantic relationships. A lot of people have 7th house transits and they're not with anyone. Well, looking at Mars as the ruler, it's in your career house. Could this also have something to do with public or professional life and the kinds of relationship dynamics that are unfolding in those spaces? Maybe. So relationship karma and questions of the balance between individuals, individual needs, and cooperation as a major theme for Aries. Sort of pretty textbook when you get Aries Libra across the 1st and 7th. So we go to Scorpio rising, and we have the collection of Aries planets in the 6th house, a place of hard work, labor, suffering, but also selfless service. And so I think right now, could there be some heroic project or labor of love that you're pouring all of your energy and heart into, especially with Mars and Cancer in the 9th house? I think of things that you would bleed for, that you would give your emotions, your heart, your soul, your suffering to, with maybe even an aura of protectiveness around it. Also, what are you working on behalf of that's draining you? That you can no longer, maybe there's a change of beliefs or evaluation of your beliefs that need to happen because you're pouring a lot of effort into something that's not reciprocating or that is draining you. And that might be based on a paradigm that you're living in that's not really the right one any longer. But also just the questions of hard work, sacrifice, maybe even themes and topics of sickness sometimes come up in the 6th house. and how do you work through those things? One thing I love about this eclipse in Aries is it tends to be very persevering. So what am I being asked to work hard through, knowing that it'll pay off if I keep going? That's sometimes a great virtue of the sixth house, is that it's a great labor that pays off eventually, but that kind of sucks while you're in it. All right, well, let's go to Sagittarius. If you're a Sagittarius, then this eclipse comes down into your fifth house, a place that is associated with creativity, creative fulfillment, romance, pregnancy, children, and just generally happiness. So the question for Sagittarians is, well, for some Sagittarians, I always just say this for the fifth house, and it doesn't always apply to people, but, are you getting ready to have a baby? Are you family planning? Are you thinking about, conceiving or starting to try to have a baby? That could be a very, fifth house eclipse kind of energy. Could also have something to do with your children themselves and what they're going through in life, a critical time for your kids, your relationship with them. And then also just questions about creative fulfillment. What am I doing with my life that grants me joy and happiness? And, do I feel creatively fulfilled? And that creatively fulfilled doesn't mean that you're a painter or something. Creative fulfillment has to do with the feeling that you're happy with who you are, and you feel, not perfect, but you feel a certain kind of happiness or joy or contentment in the things that you're doing with your life, because there's a sense of creative satisfaction. I'm using my talents, my energies, my character creatively. If not, then this could be a turning point where you realize, like, I'm not creatively fulfilled and I need to be doing more of it. Or maybe you're starting to see the results of creative actions that you've taken in the past, and they're creating new opportunities. But anyway, look at the topics of creativity, creative fulfillment, and even things like children and pregnancy. All right, well, let's go to Capricorn rising, which brings this Aries energy into, you know what, let me back it up I'll back it up a day so that we can, there we go. So now you can see all the planets in the fourth. So the eclipse energy comes into your fourth house, place that was associated with the parents, sometimes specifically, especially with the sun in the fourth house, the father, karma around family, home, living environment, ancestral karma, things that form the foundation of our life, especially where we live. So could you see buying property, selling property, moving, or relocating, getting a new apartment? Could you see sickness, death, or big transitions in the family, such as the birth of children or the death of grandparents or whatever? Yeah, eclipses in the fourth create major turnover generationally and within family units. So big changes there, things that are starting or transitions that are starting to happen around home and family karma. That's the place to look for if you're a Capricorn. But also anything that forms the foundation of your life as a base of support. And that can be psychological or material. Sometimes that's wealth and money. And what forms the foundations of life is also what we look at in the fourth house. All right, so that's for Capricorns. For Aquarians, the energy of the eclipse is forming in your third house. Now, to me, this is it's always one of the more difficult houses to describe. It was called the joy of the moon, and it's associated, like the moon, with the environment we live in. The environment is both physical and external, but it's also mental and emotional, like moods and thoughts and thought patterns and mood patterns and environmental fluctuations and so forth. When you see a solar eclipse in the third house, it usually means that there are major changes in the environment coming, a change to your mindset, a change to your psychological constitution. And that can come from a wide variety of things, like relocating or moving or changing jobs, but it's usually that the change that's trying to establish itself has to do with needing, like, I can't be in the same environment anymore, mentally, emotionally, or physically. And so I need to create some change to the environment. This can also be a house that has to do with learning and technology. So sometimes a solar eclipse in the third house means I'm going to start learning or studying something new, developing new skills, or even utilizing new technology somehow, or even buying a new car. Also, the third house karma sometimes activates the topic of siblings, so you might watch for that as well. But I just like to think of this as a time where changes in mood, mind, environment are really, really important. Now, sometimes it's also about how we respond to changes in the environment that are outside of our control. How do we make something of it? All right, so that was for Aquarians. Last but not least, Pisces. So the energy of the eclipse is falling into the second house, a place of resources, values, and what we are in possession of. Now, this could be things like, literally the things that you own, the money that you have and spend in like income and expenditures. It can be about business and the development of skills and the resources that you have can be skills that you develop or acquire, as much as it can be the money in your bank account. Sometimes people say the second house is about values, and that's usually because they'll conflate the house with Taurus, which ancient astrologers did not do. It's better to think of the second house as the kind of like the garden in your backyard and what's growing in it, except for rather than being in your backyard, it's also in your psyche, and it's what you're growing and developing in your garden that can help you or aid you as a resource that you can depend or rely upon. So something new growing in the garden. And turning points around things like money and resources. I like the Aries energy as entrepreneurial and maybe, taking some risks and starting some new things so that there's a change ultimately in your resources and what you have and what's kind of propping you up and supporting you on the material level. So love to see those changes there. I feel like it's one of the more entrepreneurial eclipses that you could get would be solar eclipse in your second house. Anyway, so hopefully these prompts fill you in and give you some idea of where to locate the eclipse in your life, because sometimes it's easy to, I don't know, you hear about an eclipse and you just go, oh my God, everything's going to change. And then there's some changes happening in one area of your life, but they don't feel like the most dramatic thing in the world. And so you miss it and you don't realize, oh, that's the eclipse right there. So I think it helps to just tune in right away to that whole sign house placement and get a little feel for where you should probably see the eclipse showing up. Now, of course, every birth chart's unique, and a lot can totally depend on every placement in your chart, every unique placement and planets that are getting touched and things like that. So, but remember, the eclipse in general, the beginning of the end, dramatic turning or starting points, will, fire, aggression, anger, effort, heroism, and a kind of energy of boiling over, and then dad or leader karma as kind of just a very specific thing that often comes up with solar eclipses, especially when the sun's exalted and with Jupiter. So that is it for today. Hopefully this gets you off to a nice start for your week. Don't forget to pop over to nightlightastrology.com and check out the upcoming courses. Horary and Year 2 start in June. The new Year 1 program starts in June. Check out the need-based tuition option. We'd really love to make sure that people who want to study aren't priced out. So take advantage of that early. There are a limited number of those available. So we do ask that you apply early if you want to use that. Any questions about any of that, email us info@nightlightastrology.com. I hope you guys are going to have an awesome week. I'm looking forward to more content to come on the eclipse. Take it easy, everyone. Bye.